This large opening in your roof could be destroying your ceiling and your walls slowly over time due to water intrusion. It's really important to regularly inspect your skylight dome covering, especially around the flanges. And when it comes time for a replacement, who in the world devised this lap sealant process for sealing anything to the roof of an RV? There's got to be a better way. Oh, wait, I do have a better way. If you stick with me, I'll show you how you can come up with a tighter, cleaner looking, longer lasting seal without the use of lap sealant. Remember last week when I started the skylight replacement on our 30-foot Beaver motorhome Monty, and then it got too hot and I ran away? Well, I'm back now, so let's get at it. I hope you can hear me. This is a really terrible microphone on this camera. So I'm starting to do the removal of this caulking, and I'm doing what I asked you not to do. I'm damaging the fiberglass roof a bit, but not to worry. It's not as bad as it looks. The only way I can get this really tough caulking up, the original caulking I believe, is to get underneath it with a chisel, big chisel, and just try to be as smooth as possible. And I can't find the screws, even though I know they're this far apart. What's that, maybe 4 inches apart? Even if I get the screw head, find the screw head and take it out, I still have to get this really hard, crusty caulking off the roof. And so when I do that, part of the gel coat of the fiberglass roof is coming off. You can see spots here. It's not as bad as it looks. You don't want to leave that exposed to the elements. You don't want to put sealant over that. So I've got epoxy filler that I'm going to fill after we get this all off. And that will be just as good as new, even better. So I'm just breaking these screws out. I'm just manually forcing them out through the holes because it's the only way to do it. What a stupid way to seal an RV. You know, would you do this to your boat? If you had a really nice boat and you were sealing a skylight, which is unusual in a boat, but let's say new ports, new windows, would you seal the window and then goop it up with 2 or 3 inches of this Dicor stuff? I just don't understand why. I guess it's the easiest way to build an RV. They don't want to take the time to seal something really precisely, and they find it easier just to put the goop down and Bob's your uncle. Well, Bob isn't your uncle. This is ridiculous. I just think that Dicor and these other companies, they're just doing this so that they can sell more of this sealant. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take this off. We're going to have a nice clean edge, nice smooth edge as though it was brand new. And then we'll seal the new skylight with I'm going to use a sikaflex sealant, which is a marine sealant. And we'll tape it off. I'll show you how to do it. It takes time, and maybe that's why the RV industry doesn't want to do it, but it looks so much better. And then you just have a nice clean seal where the water just flows off and away. But with something like this, and you've seen worse than this, I'm sure, you create a little dam here where water collects, and then it turns moldy, and it's a stupid way to do it, and it looks like crap. Okay, we're going to rebel, okay? We're not going to allow Dicor and these other companies to say that we have to buy 4 tubes to reseal this skylight. We're going to do it a different way, as though this was a boat. Okay, let's carry on. Got some work to do here. Oh, before I go any further, when you do this, if you're in the same boat as this, pardon the pun, you've got to be really careful. It's a little easier to get a chisel along a fiberglass roof because it's smooth and you're less apt to dig into the fiberglass, but you have to be careful because if you twist your tool this way, you'll start digging in. But if this is a rubber membrane roof or some other material that's whatever they call them, you know what I mean, those fabric type roofs, you have to be really careful. You wouldn't be able to slide a chisel along as neatly as this without damaging the roof. So you just need to be careful. Take your time. Don't have anything else to do for the day. For me, I'm going to be happy if I can just get this frickin' thing off today Then I'm going to go make myself a gin and tonic and relax. And tomorrow we'll come back and we'll carry on, okay? I hope these show up. You can see this screw, and there's one on the other end are rusty. That's a clear indication that water was getting in. And this is where, right below here, is where it was going through into our headliner. So I think we've nailed where our water problem was coming from. There it is. I think the water was pooling right in here. Don't know if you can see it, but there's a bit of a cavity here. It's a slope down towards the inner liner here. And I think water was getting through here and going right between this liner and then going right down into the inner part of the roof. Oh, kids. Okay, let's just get this cleaned up. Hopefully I don't do too much more damage to the roof membrane here. I love having a fiberglass roof. Okay. See you soon. You can see I've got most of the heavy crust off. And do you know what I found to be one of the best tools is just a cheap little scraper and a file. Because I know you can take this off with acetone or mineral spirits or rubbing alcohol, I don't know. I just hate when it gets all gooey, and so I find that just a scraper. I used a scraper on this section right here closest to the camera. It needs to be sharp though, and just go at a diagonal. Yay, I found a solution, you guys. WD-40, look at that. I wasn't going to use anything white, but I thought, oh my goodness, look at this. Oh, hi. I was just looking down into the shower to see if there were any naked people down there, but no, it's empty. So we're back. So today I'm just going to fill where I've ripped apart the, not ripped apart, but I've gouged the gel coat when I ripped up the old skylight. I'm going to fill this with epoxy, these spots that look kind of orange on your screen. And then I'm going to fill each one of these holes with epoxy as well. Now most people would just squirt sealant in there and call it a day. I don't really like to do that. You know, whenever I got a chance, I'd use epoxy. It's a fiberglass roof and there's wood under here. And but when you squirt the epoxy into this, it just forms such a tight waterproof seal. And then when you drill into it, it's better than drilling into just fiberglass or just wood. So I'm going to use Marine Tex as the filler. It's an epoxy, two-part epoxy. It's terrific. It's toxic. You don't want to tell anybody you're using it, and you want to wear gloves. Oh, which I've forgotten. I'll have to go down and get some gloves. It's just like a putty, and you can shape it, you can drill it, you can paint it. It's really a good durable bond. To get started, I'm just going to wipe this edge. You saw me last night clean it with WD-40 just to get the residue off. And I don't like to use chemicals very much except this Marine Tech stuff. So this is just hot soapy water. It's just Dawn soap. Okay, so let's just let that dry for a few minutes. We'll get our epoxy prepared. So the edge is nice and smooth, cleaned up, holes plugged, and I'm just wiping it down with mineral spirits. And after I do this, we'll bring the skylight up and we'll pre-drill our holes, line everything up and do a dry fit. Okay, so I've pre-drilled all the attachment holes. Yeah, we'll be all set for the morning. Starting to lose some light up here. Okay, time for a tea. Okay, so we have the skylight in place. It's dry fitted, but I want to show you something really important. You know how for a long time I've been saying we've had this water leak inside Monty that's been so frustrating. And I've determined it's been right on this corner. You can't really see it, but right here, there's a dip in the roof. And water would have collected here. And with the old skylight, it had a huge flange that came out. It was about the width of my hand here. And there was a crack, probably several cracks, stress cracks, or maybe somebody stepped on it, but there were cracks in the flange. And the cracks were on this side of the sealant. So the sealant would have been here initially, along this, where this blue tape is. But the crack was inside here, and they had so much gunk, so much of that leveling compound over top that you couldn't see anything. And so over the years, I guess people just kept piling up more sealant, and water, you know, it finds its way in. Doesn't need to have much of a track. And for years, the water has been going in here. I could tell because screws underneath here were rusted. And so this is going to fix that. So I've taped it so that we don't become too messy with the sealant. And this is the method that I want to show you. It's what we do on boats. Or I do on a boat anyway. When you're sealing ports or anything else on a boat, you don't gunk up the edge. You just do a nice clean seam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this off now. I'm just going to do a final cleaning of the bonding edge. And then we'll put the sealant in, and the sealant will squeeze out. When I put the screws in with fender washers, the sealant will ooze out, and you just take a popsicle stick and you just scrape it away along the tape, and it makes a nice neat edge. And then you remove the tape, and there's no need to build up a mound of compound, self-leveling compound here, because the job is done when you seal this. That's the bond, not the goop on top. And another problem with the self-leveling compound, there was so much that it made a ridge here. And so water would have collected. It would have come down the side of the skylight and collected in here. And then it would have just gone through the crack, you know, would have found its way through the sealant or whatever, and where it wasn't, and it would have gone in. So it's just a crazy system. So please, let's rebel against the Dicor and other compounds, because you don't need it, and it looks awful. This way you can inspect what's happening. You can look at it over the years and see if there's any breakdown in the bond, and then you can fix it. You can dig it out and redo it. But if you've covered that up with self-leveling compound, you don't have a hope to know what's happening in there. So let's not do that. This is better. The sealant I'm using is Sikaflex 295 UV. It's a marine bonding adhesive agent. It's really good. This was $31.50 Canadian. So I bet that's about $22 US. That's not any more expensive, is it, than Dicor or other less, I think, less better, right? Okay. And this specifically says on it whether adhesive for bonding of polycarbonate, and the skylight is polycarbonate. And it also says on here that it bonds to fiberglass. So we've got fiberglass and we have polycarbonate. This is a perfect match. I won't talk as I'm doing this because I'm old and I can't multitask very well. The sealant adhesive is what bonds the polycarbonate dome to the fiberglass. It's not the screws. The screws are almost secondary. So don't over tighten, because then you end up cracking polycarbonate over time. With the jostling of the motorhome, you can create cracks. And also the other thing is, when I drilled these holes, I made sure that the screws that I'm using, they're stainless, and I'm using stainless fender washers, that the screw fits easily through the hole. You don't want any resistance, because if the hole is smaller than the screw and you're forcing the screw into the fiberglass membrane, or you're forcing the screw through the polycarbonate, it's a bad idea, because then that just cracks it. And if it doesn't crack right away, it'll crack over time, because it just adds a lot of stress to that point. So I made sure that the screws drop into these holes quite easily, and what they're really binding into is the wood underneath the fiberglass. That's where it's gripping. Okay, let's get underway. Now, if I've done this right, the sealant should squeeze out through here, and then you know you've got enough. So let's get our screws in. And I know you're going to say, why don't you use an electric drill? Much faster. Yes, it's faster, but I don't like using an electric drill on things like this, because you can't feel when it's really tight and you could crack it. I like the tactile feel. And then if you take a popsicle stick and you just run it along the edge here, it's amazing. It just cleans it all up. I had some extra paint, so I touched up around the edges of it. This is the paint that I used last year. It's a marine grade paint for boats, but it works perfect on a fiberglass roof. So I'm pretty happy with this. I know my work is slow and my work is poor, but come on, is this partially acceptable? The return to my favorite Old Town bakery in Ladysmith on Vancouver Island for my favorite cinnamon buns, and the use of their washroom, which was so appropriately named. Whatever. See you next week. Thanks for watching.